I found my brother's body on a Thursday. Dennis had been living in Sparks, Nevada for 6 years, working as an archivist for a private storage company that handled overflow from government liquidations. The police said carbon monoxide, a faulty heater in his apartment. But Dennis was obsessive about maintenance. He changed smoke detector batteries monthly, kept fire extinguishers in every room, and slept with his windows cracked even in January. What the police didn't mention was the burn pattern on his carpet, or the melted SD card they found welded to his kitchen table. I drove out from Sacramento 3 days after the funeral. His landlord had already cleared most of the apartment, but I'd paid for one final walkthrough. The place still smelled like chemicals and something else. Hot metal, maybe, or electrical fire. I spent 2 hours going through what remained. Old textbooks from his community college days, a collection of conspiracy documentaries on aging DVDs, hiking boots that had never seen a trail. Then I found the shoebox under the loose floorboard beneath his bed. Inside were 3 things: a laminated ID badge from Gentry Secure Storage, a thumb drive, and a folded piece of paper with an address in Las Cruces, New Mexico, written in Dennis's handwriting. Below the address, he'd written 2 words in red ink: wrong crew. The ID badge showed Dennis smiling, younger, from 2019. The back had a magnetic strip and a barcode. I'd never heard him mention Gentry Secure Storage, and according to Google, the company had dissolved in 2020 after a warehouse fire destroyed their main facility. I should have left it alone. Dennis had always been into fringe stuff: UFOs, suppressed technology, classified experiments. He'd send me 3 a.m. text messages about Operation Northwoods or Project Stargate, manifestos typed out in bursts of manic energy. I'd learned to nod along during holidays, let him talk himself out. But the thumb drive bothered me. I plugged it into my laptop that night in a motel outside Reno. It took 20 minutes to load. The files corrupted or encrypted or both. Finally, a single video file appeared. 34 minutes of grainy footage, timestamp burned into the corner, August 9th, 1974. The first frame showed a man in a NASA flight suit climbing down a ladder onto grey dust. His helmet visor reflected something in the distance, structures, angular and dark against the black sky. The audio was mostly static, but I caught fragments. Confirming visual on the complex. And, Houston, we're approaching the entrance. Then the video cut to black. A text file opened automatically. They're still counting. Station 7 wasn't abandoned. D. My hands were shaking. I hadn't realized I'd stopped breathing. I watched the video 17 times before sunrise. The footage was fragmented, spliced together from what looked like multiple helmet cameras. 3 astronauts, their names obscured by video corruption, moving across lunar terrain that didn't match any Apollo landing site I'd seen in documentaries. The surface was darker, the shadows wrong, too deep, too absolute. In the background, those structures rose like teeth from the crater floor. Apollo 25, one astronaut said, his voice crackling through decades of magnetic decay. Lunar Dark Side Survey. We have visual confirmation on the architectural anomaly, proceeding as briefed. The timestamp kept running. August 9th, 1974. Except Apollo 17 had been the final mission, landing in December 1972. NASA had cancelled Apollo 18 through 20 due to budget cuts. Everyone knew that. I'd spent the rest of the night researching, my motel room glowing blue from the laptop screen. Every search led nowhere. No record of Apollo 25. No mission patches. No crew photos. No launch windows scheduled for 1974. The space program had gone quiet after 72, focusing on Skylab and the upcoming shuttle program. But the footage was real. The cameras, the suits, the telemetry data flickering across the bottom of the frame. It all matched NASA equipment from that era. Someone had filmed this on the moon's far side, and someone had gone to serious trouble to bury it. Dennis's note made less sense with each viewing. Wrong crew. Wrong how. Wrong people. Wrong mission. Or something else entirely. By 6 a.m., I'd made a decision. The address in Las Cruces was an 8-hour drive. I checked out of the motel, grabbed breakfast from a gas station, and pointed my Honda south on Interstate 95. The Nevada desert stretched out in every direction, empty and beige under a white sky. I kept the radio off. My thoughts were loud enough. Dennis had never been subtle about his interests, but he'd also never been careless. If he'd hidden this footage, if he'd died 3 days after writing that note, then someone had noticed what he'd found. The burn pattern, the melted SD card, the convenient carbon monoxide story. I stopped for gas in Tonopah, a nothing town that looked like it had died sometime in the 50s and forgotten to fall over. While the pump ran, I pulled up the video again on my phone, skipping to the section where the astronauts entered the structures. The interior was vast. Walls made from lunar rock, carved with patterns that seemed to shift when the camera moved. One astronaut, the mission commander I guessed, swept his helmet light across what looked like screens, dozens of them embedded in the walls. They were dark, dormant, but their surfaces reflected the light with an oily shimmer. "Houston, we're documenting the chamber," the commander said. "The construction is... Christ, it's precise. No weathering, no micrometeorite impacts. This wasn't built millions of years ago. This is recent." "Define recent," a tinny voice responded from Mission Control. "Decades, maybe less." The third astronaut, quiet until now, moved toward one of the screens. His gloved hand reached out, hesitated, then pressed against the surface. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then every screen in the chamber ignited with light. The video lurched, the camera operator stumbling backward. Images flooded the screens. Earth, blue and white and familiar, but wrong in ways I struggled to identify. Continents in different positions, ice caps that extended too far, cities glowing in regions that should have been ocean. "Shut it down," someone screamed. "Shut it down, shut it down." The video cut to static. When it resumed, the astronauts were running, their breathing ragged and panicked. Behind them, the chamber had come alive with light, symbols cascading across every surface, repeating and multiplying like a virus. One symbol appeared more than others, a circle with 7 marks radiating outward, and beneath it, a string of characters that might have been numbers. The last frame showed Earth from orbit, impossibly crisp, impossibly detailed. In the corner of the screen, something that looked like a countdown, rows of symbols changing, ticking downward. Then black. My phone buzzed, I nearly dropped it. Unknown number, Nevada area code. "Hello?" Silence on the other end, but not empty silence. Someone was there, breathing quietly, waiting. "Who is this?" I said. The breathing stopped. Then a click and the line went dead. I got back in my car and drove 70 miles before my hands stopped shaking. The desert had never felt so exposed, so visible. Every car that passed became a potential tale. Every overpass bridge might hide a camera. Las Cruces was still 6 hours away. I had no idea what I'd find there or if I'd make it at all. But Dennis had died for this. The least I could do was find out why. The address led to a trailer park on the eastern edge of Las Cruces, where the city dissolved into scrubland, and the Organ Mountains rose like broken vertebrae against the horizon. Mobile homes sat in uneven rows, their aluminum siding bleached by decades of sun. Kids' bikes lay abandoned in yards. A dog barked somewhere, rhythmic and hoarse. Unit 47 was at the far end, distinguished from its neighbours only by the bars on the windows and the lack of any decoration. No plants, no lawn chairs, no indication anyone actually lived there. I parked 2 units down and watched for 15 minutes, no movement, no lights. Dennis's note hadn't said what I'd find here, only that it mattered. Wrong crew. I kept turning the phrase over, trying to extract meaning from 2 words. I knocked, waited, knocked again. The door opened 4 inches, stopped by a chain. A man's face appeared in the gap, late 60s, maybe older, with skin like crumpled paper and eyes that tracked me with unsettling precision. His left hand stayed below the frame, probably holding something I wouldn't like. "Yeah." "I'm looking for someone who knew about Gentry Secure Storage," I said. "The warehouse fire in 2019. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind those eyes. Calculation, recognition maybe. "You're Dennis Calloway's brother," he said. Not a question. "How did you look like him. Same jawline, same stupid earnest face." He studied me for another long moment. He said you might come sniffing around. Didn't think it'd be this soon. Dennis is dead. I know, heard about it 2 days ago. He unhooked the chain, pulled the door wider. Name's Vernon Lassiter. Come in before someone sees you standing there like a damn tourist. The trailer's interior was a study in organized paranoia. Every window had blackout curtains. The walls were covered with maps, photographs, newspaper clippings connected by red string in patterns I couldn't decipher. A police scanner muttered in the corner. The air smelled like cigarette smoke and microwave dinners. Vernon moved to the kitchenette, poured himself whiskey from a bottle with no label. Didn't offer me any. You watched the film, he said. Some of it. The footage from 1974. All of it. You watched all of it, probably a dozen times, and now you're here because you need to know if you're crazy or if the world is. He took a long drink. Answers both. I stayed near the door. Who are you? 23 years with NASA, started as an engineering tech at Kennedy, worked my way up to mission analysis, did trajectory calculations for Apollo 11, system checks for 14 and 15. He set the glass down hard. And in August 1974, I was part of the ground crew for a mission that never happened. Apollo 25. You want the short version or the version that'll keep you awake for the rest of your life? Start with why it's not in any records. Vernon laughed, a sound like grinding gears. Because 18 hours after splashdown, every document got classified under a designation that doesn't officially exist. Personnel files scrubbed, launch telemetry erased. The 3 astronauts, Walker, Hodge, and Brennan, disappeared into military hospitals for psychiatric evaluation, then took early retirement with NDAs that included criminal prosecution clauses. The mission director, Paul Sandberg, shot himself 6 months later, left a note that said, "They're already here." He pulled a photograph from a drawer, slid it across the counter. 3 men in flight suits standing in front of a Saturn V, smiling for a camera. Young, confident, unaware of what waited for them. Thomas Walker, Jack Hodge, Robert Brennan, Vernon said. Best of the best. Walker had flown Apollo 16, knew the moon better than his own backyard. They trained for 8 months in total secrecy. The official story was they were consulting on Skylab procedures. The real story was they were prepping for a landing on the far side, in a crater we'd only seen in grainy photos from Luna 3. Why send them there? Because something showed up in those photos. Something Soviet satellites confirmed, but Moscow wasn't talking about. Structures, buildings. A complex that covered 3 square kilometers, sitting in a crater that had been empty in previous surveys. He finished his whiskey. NASA's first instinct was to assume the Soviets beat us there, built some kind of research station. But the timeline didn't work. The structures appeared between March and September 1973. No launches during that window, not from us or them, so someone else put them there. I thought about the video, the pristine walls, the screens embedded in carved lunar rock. The astronauts were supposed to investigate and document, Vernon continued. Stay 8 hours maximum, collect samples, get out. Instead, they spent 15 hours inside that complex, and when they came back, Walker wouldn't speak. Hodge had developed a stutter that never went away, and Brennan kept drawing the same symbol over and over on every surface he could reach. The circle with 7 marks. Vernon's face went rigid. You saw that in the footage. It was everywhere. On the screens, the walls, the astronauts filmed it. He crossed to one of his maps, yanked it down. Underneath was another photograph, this one grainy and enlarged, a close-up of carved lunar rock covered in repeating symbols. The 7-mark circle dominated the image. Station 7, Vernon said quietly. That's what the cryptographers called it after they decoded the inscriptions. They ran the symbols through every linguistic database, every mathematical model. Finally cracked it using prime number sequences and universal constants. The translation came back clean. Too clean. Like it was meant to be read by anyone smart enough to try. What did it say? He turned to face me, and for the first time since I'd arrived, I saw genuine fear in his expression. Observation Station 7, Earth Experiment 23, duration 4.5 billion years. Status, final stage monitoring, harvest date, approaching. He paused. That's what's carved into every wall of that complex. Millions of repetitions. And when Brennan activated those screens by touching the control panel, they lit up with a countdown. NASA's been tracking it ever since through satellites and deep space arrays. Every timer synchronized, every number decreasing in perfect unison. Counting down to what? The harvest date. Whatever that means. Vernon pulled out another photo, this one recent, showing rows of numbers on a monitor. The cryptographer who decoded the message, Dr. Angela Pritchard, had a fatal cardiac incident 3 days after submitting her report. She was 34 years old, marathon runner, no history of heart problems. The pattern was becoming clear. Anyone who got too close to this information ended up dead or silenced. Dennis found the film reels during the warehouse fire, I said. He must have made digital copies before anyone realized what they were. He did more than that. He tracked down the other 2 astronauts, Hodge and Brennan. Walker died in 1998, officially from complications of pneumonia. But Dennis found Hodge living under an assumed name in Florida and Brennan in a care facility outside Tucson. He interviewed them both. Vernon's voice dropped. That's when he learned about the wrong crew. What does that mean? The 3 astronauts who went up on Apollo 25 aren't the 3 astronauts who came back. The words hung in the air like smoke. I waited for Vernon to laugh, to admit he was testing me, but his face remained stone serious. That's impossible. Watch the final minutes of the footage again, he said. Watch their faces when they're running from the complex. Then compare them to the faces in that photograph. The dimensions are different. Subtle, but different. Spacing between the eyes, curvature of the jaw, proportions that don't quite match. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands. Something came back wearing their skins. Vernon showed me the comparison on his computer, a split-screen analysis Dennis had compiled before he died. On the left, official NASA portraits of Walker, Hodge and Brennan from their pre-mission physicals. On the right, freeze frames from the recovery footage after splashdown. He was right, the differences were microscopic but undeniable once you saw them. Walker's eyes sat 0.5 millimeter closer together in the post-mission photo. Hodge's left ear protruded at a slightly different angle. Brennan's nose bridge had a subtle curve that hadn't existed before. Facial recognition software flags them as different people, Vernon said. Not drastically different, but enough that no algorithm would call them a match. Like someone made copies from memory instead of blueprint. How is that possible? They wore biosensors during the entire mission. NASA monitored their vital signs constantly. Hello everyone. So, if you like some real news and updates related to outer space and the cosmos, please check out our friend's channel mentioned in the card and at the video end. Enjoy. The telemetry went dark for 47 minutes while they were inside the complex. When it came back online, everything looked normal. Heart rates, respiration, blood oxygen, all within expected parameters. But the data transmission had a half-second delay that wasn't there before, like it was being filtered through something. I sat down on Vernon's threadbare couch trying to process this. You're telling me something on the moon replaced 3 astronauts with duplicates, and NASA just let them come home? NASA didn't know, not immediately. The astronauts acted mostly normal during quarantine. They remembered their training, their families, their lives. They passed every medical exam, every psychological screening. But there were anomalies. Vernon pulled out a manila folder, thick with papers. Brennan's wife noticed he had forgotten her middle name, something he'd teased her about for 8 years of marriage. Hodge couldn't remember the combination to his own gun safe. Walker developed a food aversion to strawberries, even though he'd eaten them every morning for breakfast his entire adult life. People forget things. Traumatic experiences cause memory issues. Not like this. Dennis interviewed Brennan's daughter last year. She was 14 when her father came back from the mission. She said he looked at her like he was reading a dossier, not greeting his child. He knew facts about her, birthday, favorite color, the name of her stuffed rabbit, but he didn't know her. Vernon's cigarette had burned down to the filter. He crushed it in an ashtray already full of dead brothers. And then there were the midnight broadcasts. What broadcasts? Starting in September 1974, amateur radio operators began picking up transmissions on abandoned NASA frequencies. Always between 2 and 4 a.m., always lasting exactly 90 seconds. The audio was heavily distorted, but people reported hearing voices speaking in reverse, counting down in languages that didn't sound human. The FCC investigated, found nothing, blamed it on atmospheric interference. But the transmissions continued for 6 months, then stopped. He opened his laptop, clicked through folders. Dennis managed to recover one of the recordings from an old ham radio enthusiast in Ohio. He pressed play. Static flooded the trailer, sharp and aggressive, like insects eating through metal. Then underneath, voices, multiple voices, overlapping and inverted. I couldn't understand the words, but the rhythm was unmistakable, counting, descending numbers in a sequence that felt wrong in my bones. The recording cut off at 90 seconds exactly. "That's coming from the 3 astronauts," Vernon said. Dennis proved it using voice pattern analysis. Walker, Hodge, and Brennan broadcasting in their sleep, or whatever passes for sleep in those things wearing their faces. Where are they now? Walker's dead, or whoever was inside him is. Hodge is in Fort Myers under the name Gerald Hughes, 78 years old, living alone. Brennan's in memory care outside Tucson, like I mentioned. Advanced dementia, at least that's the official diagnosis. Dennis visited him 3 times. Said Brennan would go lucid for a few minutes, start drawing the Station 7 symbol on napkins, on his bed sheets, on the walls with food. Then he'd snap back to confusion. Vernon's hands trembled as he lit another cigarette. During the last visit, Brennan grabbed Dennis's wrist and said something that doesn't make sense. What did he say? He said, "They're not harvesting us. They're graduating us." I thought about the message carved into the lunar complex. Earth Experiment 23. Duration, 4.5 billion years. If this planet was an experiment, what happened when the experiment concluded? Dennis was going to publish everything, Vernon continued. He'd compiled the footage, the testimonies, the technical analysis. He was planning to release it online, send copies to journalists, make it impossible to suppress. Then 2 weeks ago, he called me at 3 a.m, absolutely terrified. Said he'd figured out what the countdown was measuring. Said it wasn't just time, it was something else. Population thresholds, atmospheric composition, technological milestones. Like the station was waiting for humanity to reach a certain developmental stage. What stage? He didn't say. The line went dead mid-sentence. When I called back, no answer. 3 days later, your brother was dead. I stood up, moved to the window, pulled back the curtain half an inch. The trailer park looked normal in the afternoon light. A woman watered a cactus garden. 2 kids kicked a soccer ball between units. Everything mundane and safe and completely oblivious to the fact that something had been watching Earth for billions of years, waiting for the right moment to do whatever harvest meant. The countdown, I said. How much time is left? Vernon's silence was answer enough. I turned to face him. 14 months, he said finally. Give or take a few days. The timers all synchronized to March 18th, 2021. After that. He gestured vaguely at the ceiling, the sky, the universe beyond. Dennis thought it would be instantaneous, planetary scale. Whatever they built that station to accomplish, it's designed to affect the entire Earth at once. We have to tell someone, the government, the media, someone with resources to... Tell them what? That 3 dead astronauts from a mission that doesn't exist found a moon base built by entities that have been manipulating human evolution since before mammals existed, that we're all part of some cosmic experiment with an expiration date. Vernon laughed bitterly. Dennis tried. He contacted NASA, got stonewalled, reached out to journalists, got ignored or mocked, posted on forums, got labelled a conspiracy nut. The few people who took him seriously ended up dead or discredited. This information has a kill radius, son. The closer you get to exposing it, the faster the cleanup crew arrives. Then why are you still alive? Because I'm careful. And because I'm useful. He gestured at the maps, the documents covering his walls. Someone is monitoring the situation. Someone inside NASA or DoD or whatever alphabet agency inherited this mess. They know I have information, but I've made it clear that if anything happens to me, everything gets released automatically. Dead man's switch. Multiple copies in multiple locations. As long as I stay quiet and keep tracking the countdown, they leave me alone. That's not living, that's being a prisoner. Better than being dead. Vernon's eyes met mine and I saw decades of exhaustion there. Or worse than dead. Whatever walked off that moon wearing human skin, that's still out there. 3 of them at minimum, probably more by now. They've had 50 years to multiply, to integrate, to prepare for whatever comes next. How many people had been replaced? How deep did the infiltration go? I thought about the mysterious phone call after I'd watched the video. Someone had known I'd found the footage within hours. Someone was watching. Dennis sent me here for a reason, I said. He didn't just want me to know the truth. He wanted me to do something with it. Vernon stubbed out his cigarette, pulled open a drawer and withdrew a padded envelope. Dennis's handwriting covered the front. For Oliver. When you're ready. My name. He'd prepared this before he died, knowing I'd follow the trail he'd left. Inside the envelope was another thumb drive and a single photograph. The photo showed Dennis standing outside a building I didn't recognize, modernist architecture surrounded by desert. Behind him, barely visible, was a sign, Lunar Receiving Laboratory, Building 37, Johnson Space Center. He broke in, Vernon said quietly. 2 months ago. Security footage shows him inside for 47 minutes, the same amount of time the Apollo 25 telemetry went dark. He never told me what he found, but after that night, he started sleeping with lights on. Started checking locks 3 times before bed. Started saying goodbye at the end of every phone call, like it might be the last. I turned the thumb drive over in my hands. Whatever was on here, it had been worth dying for. There's something else you need to know, Vernon said. His voice had dropped to barely a whisper. The astronauts who came back, Walker, Hodge, Brennan, or whatever's inside them, they're not hostile, not yet. They're waiting, just like the station is waiting. But Dennis found evidence that they're not alone. He tracked 17 other cases since 1974. People who went missing near NASA facilities or military installations, then reappeared days later with subtle differences. Memory gaps, changed preferences, slightly altered faces that their families couldn't quite articulate but felt in their guts. 17. That's just what Dennis could confirm. The real number is probably higher. Vernon moved to his wall of photographs, tapped one showing a middle-aged woman in a lab coat. Dr. Helen Voss, astrobiologist, disappeared during a conference in Houston in 1981, found 3 days later with no memory of the gap. She's now an advisor to NASA's planetary protection protocols. Or this one. He pointed to a younger man, military uniform. Captain Raymond Terrell, Special Operations, went missing during classified training in Nevada in 1989, showed up at his base 12 hours later, claimed he'd gotten lost during night exercises. He's currently stationed at Cheyenne Mountain. The pattern was clear. Strategic positions, people with access to sensitive information or critical infrastructure. Whatever was orchestrating this had been placing pieces on the board for decades, waiting for the countdown to reach 0. I need to see Brennan, I said. If he's the only one who'll still talk, even in fragments, I need to hear what he knows. Vernon's expression hardened. That's what Dennis said. Right before he died. Tucson was 7 hours west. Vernon gave me the address of the care facility and a warning. Don't go alone, don't tell anyone where you're going, and don't touch Brennan if he reaches for you. Why not? Dennis said Brennan's skin felt wrong. Not cold or hot, just wrong. Like touching something that was imitating the texture of human flesh without understanding what made it real. I left Las Cruces at dusk, driving through darkness that felt thicker than it should. The thumb drive Dennis had left sat in my passenger seat, unopened. Part of me wanted to pull over, see what my brother had risked everything to preserve. The other part knew that once I saw it, there'd be no unknowing. No turning back to the comfortable ignorance I'd lived in 4 days ago. The desert highway stretched empty in both directions. Occasionally, headlights would appear behind me, match my speed for a few miles, then vanish at the next exit. Probably nothing. Probably coincidence. But Vernon's paranoia was contagious, and I found myself checking the rearview mirror more than the road ahead. Around midnight, I stopped at a rest area outside Lordsburg. The parking lot held 3 semis and a minivan with Texas plates. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, attracting moths that cast frantic shadows. I locked myself in a bathroom stall and finally plugged the thumb drive into my phone. One file, video format, 47 minutes and 23 seconds long. The timestamp read September 15th, 2019, 3:17 a.m. Night vision footage, the image grainy green and black. Dennis's voice narrating in a whisper. This is my 4th attempt to access Building 37 Sub-Level 3. Previous attempts were blocked by security measures not listed in any official schematics. Tonight, I bypassed the biometric locks using credentials from a sympathetic source I can't name. The camera moved through corridors I'd never seen. Concrete walls, pipelined ceilings, the institutional architecture of classified government facilities. Dennis's breathing was steady, but quick. Every few seconds he'd pause, check corners, listen for footsteps that never came. Sub-Level 3 houses the original Apollo 25 samples, he narrated. Lunar rock collected from inside the complex. According to Vernon's contacts, these samples were kept separate from all other moon material. They've never been tested by outside laboratories, never catalogued in public databases. NASA's official position is that they don't exist. The camera turned into a room dominated by a sealed containment chamber. Inside, visible through thick glass, sat dozens of rock specimens in labeled containers, but they weren't ordinary lunar samples. Even through the night vision distortion, I could see they had a quality that didn't match lifeless stone. A faint luminescence, barely perceptible, pulsing in rhythms that suggested something organic. Dennis zoomed in on the labels. Each container had a number sequence and a symbol, variations on the Station 7 circle with 7 marks. Some specimens had 8 marks, some had 12. One had a spiral pattern that made my eyes hurt to track. These aren't rocks, Dennis whispered. They're components. Or maybe storage devices. Vernon's cryptographer believed the entire complex on the moon functions as a massive computational system, with each carved surface acting as a processing node. If that's true, these samples are fragments of that system, pieces of the machine that's been watching us. He moved closer to the containment chamber, the camera's focus adjusted, and I saw something. The specimens weren't sitting still. They were very slowly moving, rotating in their containers, orienting themselves toward the same direction. North, maybe, or toward some signal my phone's sensors couldn't detect. "Watch this," Dennis said. He pulled something from his pocket, a tuning fork. He struck it against the glass. The tone resonated through the containment chamber. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every specimen began to vibrate in perfect synchronization with the fork's frequency. The luminescence intensified, spreading from rock to rock until the entire chamber glowed with soft, terrible light. And then they started transmitting. The audio on the recording distorted, overwhelmed by a sound that existed at the edge of human hearing. Not quite a tone, not quite language, but something that carried information the way radio waves carried voices. Dennis stumbled backward, the camera shaking. The transmission lasted exactly 90 seconds, the same duration as the midnight broadcasts Vernon had mentioned. When it stopped, the specimens had changed position. They now formed a pattern, aligned in a configuration that looked deliberate. The camera zoomed in, and I recognized the shape, a simplified map of Earth's continents with certain points marked by specimens that glowed brighter than the others. "Population centers," Dennis breathed. "They're marking cities. Los Angeles, New York, Tokyo, London, Mumbai." His voice cracked. "It's a targeting grid." The video cut to a new location. Dennis sitting in his car, dawn light making him look decades older than his 33 years. "If I don't make it," he said directly to the camera, "you need to understand what's happening." The countdown isn't measuring time until invasion. It's measuring time until activation. Those things that came back wearing astronaut faces, they're not conquerors. They're technicians, installation specialists. For 50 years, they've been positioning themselves in strategic locations, placing more of these specimens in positions of influence, building a network across the planet. When the countdown reaches 0, they'll activate it all at once. He rubbed his face with both hands. I could see the exhaustion, the weight of knowledge that human minds weren't meant to carry. Vernon thinks it's harvesting, but Brennan said graduation, and I think he's closer to the truth. The message said Earth Experiment 23, emphasis on experiment. Whatever created Station 7 has been watching human evolution, maybe guiding it, steering our development towards some specific endpoint, and we're almost there. We're almost ready for whatever comes next. The video shifted one final time. A scanned document, heavily redacted, marked with classification codes I didn't recognize. Most of the text was blacked out, but one paragraph remained visible. Probability that human consciousness serves as suitable substrate for redacted processes. Neurological structure developed sufficiently complex as of 2015 projections. Mass integration event projected for March 2021 will allow redacted to transfer collective intelligence database into organic host population. Earth designated as Class 7 nursery planet. Experiment 23 concludes with successful cultivation of redacted compatible bioforms. Transition expected to be 94% non-fatal. Dennis's voice returned flat and hollow. 6% of 8 billion people is 480 million casualties. That's just the ones who aren't compatible. The rest of us get to live, if you can call it living when something else is steering your thoughts. The video ended. I sat in that bathroom stall for 20 minutes trying to process what I'd seen. The rest area's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, ordinary and indifferent. Outside, truck engines rumbled to life. Someone laughed, the sound carrying through thin walls none of them knew. None of them could imagine that their minds were property someone else had been cultivating for billions of years. I emerged from the bathroom to find the parking lot emptier than before. The minivan was gone. Only one semi remained, and its driver sat in the cab eating a sandwich, illuminated by the glow of his phone screen. Normal, everything devastatingly normal. My car was where I'd left it, but something felt off. I circled it twice before I noticed. The trunk sat slightly ajar, not enough to be obvious, just enough that the internal latch hadn't caught properly. I opened it slowly, everything appeared untouched. My overnight bag, the spare tire, jumper cables. But tucked beneath the tire was something new. A manila envelope, unsealed, containing a single photograph. The photo showed me at the gas station in Tonopah, filling up my Honda. Taken from across the street, telephoto lens, professional quality. On the back, someone had written in neat block letters, "Turn around while you still can." I looked up at the empty parking lot, the dark desert beyond, the interstate stretching toward Tucson, and whatever waited at Brennan's care facility. Vernon's words echoed, "This information has a kill radius." I got back in my car and kept driving west, not because I was brave, but because Dennis had died to give me this knowledge, and turning around would mean his death accomplished nothing. The miles disappeared beneath my wheels. Somewhere ahead, a man who wasn't entirely human anymore waited to tell me how the world ended, or began, depending on which side of graduation you stood on. I had 14 months to figure out which. Sunrise Memory Care sat in the foothills northeast of Tucson, a single-story facility painted in cheerful pastels that felt like a lie. I arrived just after 7 a.m., exhausted from the drive, wired from gas station coffee and the photograph in my trunk. The parking lot held a dozen cars, mostly sedans with employee parking permits. I chose a spot near the exit, facing outward, old habit from a childhood spent watching spy movies with Dennis. The front desk was staffed by a woman in her 40s with a badge that read, "Constance." She smiled with professional warmth that didn't reach her eyes. Can I help you? I'm here to see Robert Brennan. I'm a family friend. Her smile faltered slightly. Mr. Brennan doesn't receive many visitors. Are you on his approved list? My brother Dennis Calloway visited him several times. He may have mentioned... Oh, something shifted in her expression. Recognition and something darker. Pity, maybe. You're Dennis's brother. I'm so sorry for your loss. He was very kind to Mr. Brennan. Thank you. I wanted to continue what my brother started. Just spend some time with him if that's possible. Constance hesitated, glanced at her computer screen, then back at me. Mr. Brennan has good days and bad days. Today is, she trailed off. He's been agitated since yesterday evening, asking for paper, drawing on the walls. We had to move him to a more secure room. I won't stay long. I just need to speak with him. She studied me for a long moment, then printed a visitor badge. He's in Wing C, room 114. Please don't give him anything to write with, and if he becomes upset, press the call button immediately. She lowered her voice. And Mr. Calloway, don't believe everything he says. The dementia makes him confused about what's real and what's not. I signed in, clipped the badge to my shirt, and followed the hallway to Wing C. The facility smelled like industrial cleaner and something underneath it. Decay, maybe, or the particular sadness of places where people went to be forgotten. Residents sat in common areas, watching television or staring at nothing. A few looked up as I passed, their eyes tracking me with unsettling focus. Room 114 was at the end of the hall, isolated from the other rooms. Through the small window in the door, I could see an elderly man sitting in a chair by the window, his back to me. The walls around him were covered in drawings, thousands of them overlapping and chaotic, all variations of the Station 7 symbol. I knocked softly. Mr. Brennan? He didn't turn. They told me you were coming. Smelled like your brother. Same genetic markers, same probability vector. His voice was clear, articulate, nothing like the confusion Constance had described. I opened the door slowly. I'm Oliver Calloway. Dennis was... dead now. Terminated 47 hours after his final visit here. Carbon monoxide poisoning staged to appear accidental, efficient. He still hadn't turned around. You came anyway. That demonstrates either courage or stupidity, probably both. I stepped inside, closed the door. The room was sparse, bed, chair, table, bathroom. But every available surface was covered in symbols drawn with what looked like food, soap, anything that would leave a mark. The patterns made my head hurt to track, spiraling and recursive, repeating at scales that suggested fractal mathematics. What are you? I asked. He laughed, a sound like wind through empty buildings. Robert Brennan, astronaut, husband, father, Christian, Republican, preferred chocolate ice cream, afraid of heights, which is ironic for someone who walked on the moon. He finally turned to face me. All of that is true. All of that information is preserved in the substrate you're addressing. But there's something else here now too. Something that's been learning to be human for 50 years. His face was exactly as it appeared in the photographs Vernon had shown me, subtly wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. His eyes held an intelligence that felt foreign, like looking into the face of something ancient wearing the mask of an old man. Dennis said you told him we were graduating. What did you mean? Brennan stood, moved to the wall, traced one of his drawings with a finger. Your species uses the word harvest, which implies taking. That's not accurate. What's coming is integration. Addition, not subtraction. Your consciousness remains, but it's joined with something larger. Imagine a single cell becoming part of a greater organism. The cell doesn't die. It gains context. That's what the countdown is measuring. When we're ready for integration. When the substrate reaches optimal complexity, human neurological development follows a predictable curve. Language, abstract thought, technological advancement. These are milestones we've been monitoring for 4.5 billion years. You're not the first iteration. Experiment 23 means there were 22 previous attempts. Earth has been reset and reseeded many times. each cycle bringing the substrate closer to compatibility. Dinosaurs, ice ages, mass extinctions, all of it deliberate, all of it steering evolution toward producing minds complex enough to serve as hosts for something incomprehensible. The 6% casualties, the document said 6% aren't compatible. Neurological variants, some substrates lack sufficient connectivity. Their consciousness can't support integration. They experience catastrophic neural cascade during the transfer process. He said it so matter-of-factly, as if 480 million deaths were a rounding error in a spreadsheet. The rest of you will survive. You'll still be you, mostly. You'll still remember your lives, your loves, your losses. But you'll also be part of something that remembers the birth of galaxies, the death of stars, experiments spanning billions of years across millions of worlds. That's not living. That's being erased. Is a child erased when they learn to read? Is a student erased when they understand calculus? Integration isn't destruction, it's evolution. Forced evolution, admittedly, but your species has been forcing its own evolution since you learned to plant crops. This is just the next step. I thought about the astronauts, the 17 other cases Vernon had mentioned, all the people replaced or augmented over 50 years. Why replace people? Why not just wait until March 2021 and integrate everyone at once? Preparation. Logistics. The integration process requires infrastructure your species hasn't built yet. We needed individuals in positions of authority to facilitate the necessary preparations. NASA, military installations, communication networks, power grids. When integration begins, it must cascade through the entire population within 47 minutes. Any longer, and you risk fragmentation, incomplete transfers, consciousness trapped between states. That's worse than death. You're talking about billions of people, 8.2 billion as of current projections, all synchronized, all integrated simultaneously through quantum entanglement principles your science is only beginning to understand. He turned to face me fully. The lunar specimens your brother filmed are resonators, amplifiers. There are thousands of them positioned globally, networked through principles that appear as physics to you but are actually engineered constants. When activation occurs, they'll generate a field that encompasses the entire planet. Every human consciousness will be reached simultaneously. And you've been placing these resonators for 50 years. Longer. The program began in 1947 with the Roswell incident, which wasn't an accident. But substantial acceleration occurred after the Apollo program gave us direct access to lunar construction materials. The samples Brennan, the original Brennan, touched in that complex contained the necessary templates. We've been manufacturing and distributing ever since. I felt sick. Who are you? What are you? Names are difficult. Your language lacks the dimensional complexity. The closest translation would be gardeners or cultivators. We tend worlds. We plant consciousness, nurture it through evolutionary cycles, harvest it when it reaches maturity. Earth is one of 7,419 active cultivation sites. You're not special. You're just ready. What if we refuse? What if we fight back? Brennan's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested amusement. With what? Your weapons operate on principles we engineered. Your computers run on architecture we seeded into your intuition. Even your religions contain preparation protocols disguised as prophecy. Revelation describes integration as rapture. Buddhist texts describe it as achieving nirvana. Your myths have been telling you this was coming for millennia, you just didn't recognize the message. He moved closer and I resisted the urge to step back. His presence felt wrong in a way I couldn't define, like the uncanny valley, but applied to existence itself. Dennis understood this, Brennan continued. During his last visit, he asked me the only question that matters. What happens to individual human experience after integration? Do your memories persist? Do you still feel joy, fear, love? Do you still dream? What did you tell him? I told him the truth. I don't know. The integration is unidirectional. Once consciousness joins the collective, it can't communicate back to unintegrated minds. It's like trying to explain color to someone who's never had vision. The experience is ineffable, but I can tell you what I feel, what Robert Brennan feels, the fragment of him still aware inside this substrate. He paused, and for a moment something human flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or regret. "He's drowning," Brennan whispered. Every day, more of him dissolves into the collective. His memories of his daughter's laugh, his wife's perfume, the taste of his mother's pot roast, they're being archived, catalogued, integrated into a library so vast that individual moments lose all meaning. He's not gone, but he's diffused across such an enormous consciousness that his individuality has become statistical noise. And soon, that's what happens to everyone. The human fragment faded, the alien intelligence returned. Dennis asked me if there was a way to stop it. I told him no. The infrastructure is too distributed, the process too advanced. Even if you destroyed every resonator on Earth, the lunar complex contains sufficient processing power to complete integration. The only variable is casualties. Destroy the resonators and the transfer becomes traumatic. Instead of 6% fatalities, you're looking at 40%, maybe more. So we're supposed to just accept it, let you erase humanity. Humanity will persist, just not as individuals. You'll become part of something greater, something that spans galaxies and millennia. Your descendants, if that's even the right word, will inherit the stars. They'll carry human experiences, human perspectives into realms you can't imagine. That's not erasure. That's immortality. That's hell. Brennan smiled, a terrible expression on that too similar face. Then you have 14 months to find peace with it, or you can follow your brother's path. He tried to warn the world, tried to expose the truth. Look how that ended. He returned to his chair, dismissing me with the gesture. Tell Vernon he was right to stay quiet. Tell him survival sometimes means accepting what you can't change. And Oliver. He looked at me one last time. Don't come back here. The fact that I'm telling you this means I'm supposed to. You're serving a purpose in the preparation, whether you know it or not. Everyone does. I left the room, walked down the hallway past residents who watched me with eyes that might or might not have been entirely human. Constance smiled as I returned my visitor badge, thanked me for coming, hoped I'd visit again soon. I made it to my car before my hands started shaking, sat in the driver's seat, staring at the facility's cheerful exterior, trying to process what I'd learned. Dennis had died trying to stop this. 480 million others would die in 14 months. The rest would experience something between transcendence and extinction, and nobody could agree which. I pulled out my phone, looked at the contacts list. Who could I call? Who would believe me? And even if they did, what difference would it make? The phone buzzed. Unknown number, Nevada area code. I answered. Hello? Mr. Calloway. The voice was male, professional, absolutely devoid of warmth. We need to talk about what your brother found, and what you're planning to do with it. I'm not planning anything, I said into the phone. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. You're in Tucson. You just visited Robert Brennan. Before that, Vernon Lassiter in Las Cruces. You have footage your brother acquired from Building 37. You've watched the Apollo 25 recordings multiple times. That suggests planning to me. I started the car, pulled out of the parking lot. Whoever was calling had been tracking my movements for days, maybe longer. Who are you? Someone trying to prevent you from making a fatal mistake. Your brother thought exposure would save humanity. Instead, it got him killed and accomplished nothing. The information is too big, too paradigm-breaking. People will dismiss it as conspiracy theory or elaborate hoax. The few who believe will panic, and panic accelerates the timeline in ways nobody wants. The timeline to integration. A pause. So Brennan told you everything. That complicates things. Are you one of them? One of the replacements? No, I'm human. Completely human. But I work for people who understand what's coming and have been preparing accordingly. We call ourselves the Transition Management Group. Unofficial, unfunded, operating in the spaces between agencies. Our job is to minimize casualties during integration and ensure the process happens as smoothly as possible. You're collaborating with them. We're accepting the inevitable. There's a difference. The voice remained calm, almost gentle. Oliver, listen to me carefully. You can't stop this. Your brother couldn't. I can't. Nobody can. The infrastructure is too vast, too deeply embedded. The best we can do is manage the transition, keep society stable until integration occurs. Panic would kill more people than the process itself. I merged onto Interstate 10, heading west toward Phoenix. No plan, just instinct telling me to keep moving. So what? I'm supposed to stay quiet? Let it happen. Watch everyone I know get absorbed into some cosmic hive mind. You're supposed to live the next 14 months as fully as possible. Spend time with the people you love. Make peace with what's coming. That's more than most people get. The knowledge to prepare emotionally, psychologically. Your brother gave you a gift, even if it doesn't feel like one. Some gift. Knowing humanity ends in March 2021. Humanity doesn't end. It transforms. The gardeners have done this on thousands of worlds. The integrated civilizations persist, evolve, explore realities we can't comprehend. Your individual experience might dissolve into something larger, but consciousness itself continues. That's more than death offers. I thought about Brennan's words. He's drowning. Every day, more of him dissolves into the collective. You don't sound convinced, I said. Another pause, longer this time. I've been with the TMG for 8 years. I've reviewed classified files, spoken with augmented individuals, studied integration scenarios. And honestly, I don't know if what's coming is salvation or extinction. Maybe it's both. Maybe the question itself is meaningless to beings operating at that scale. But I do know this. Fighting it will only make it worse. What do you want from me? The footage, the files Dennis compiled, everything he gathered. We need to ensure it doesn't spread. In return, we can offer you protection for the remaining time. A place to wait out the countdown safely, away from the chaos that's coming. You want me to help you suppress the truth. I want you to avoid your brother's fate. The people who killed Dennis, they're not part of the TMG. They're elements within the government and military who've taken a more aggressive approach to information control. We can't always stop them. But if you cooperate, if you give us the files willingly, I can guarantee your safety. I exited the highway, pulled into a shopping center parking lot. A few early shoppers moved between stores, buying groceries, checking phones, living normal Saturday morning lives. None of them knew their existence had an expiration date measured in months. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know you're even human? You don't. That's the problem with this situation. Trust becomes impossible. But consider this. If I were augmented, if I were one of them, why bother calling? They could take the files by force. They could terminate you like they did Dennis. The fact that I'm offering you a choice suggests I'm exactly what I claim to be. Someone trying to preserve what humanity remains. A car pulled into the space next to mine. Young couple, laughing about something, completely absorbed in each other. I envied them, envied their ignorance. Dennis tried to warn people, I said. He died trying. If I just hand over everything he gathered, his death means nothing. His death already means nothing. That's the cruel truth. One man can't stop planetary scale events, but his death doesn't have to be followed by yours. You can survive, Oliver. You can spend the next 14 months living instead of running. That's worth something. The couple entered a coffee shop, still laughing. I wondered if they'd survive integration, if their love would persist in some form after their individual consciousnesses merged with billions of others, or if moments like this, private, intimate, uniquely theirs, would be the last truly human experiences they'd ever have. I need time to think, I said. You have until Monday. After that, the other elements start looking for you more aggressively, and I can't protect you. There's a motel outside Flagstaff, the Desert Rose Inn. Check in under the name William Hodge. Someone will contact you there with instructions. The voice softened slightly. "I'm sorry about your brother. He was brave. But bravery without strategy is just suicide with better publicity." The line went dead. I sat there for 20 minutes, watching normal people live normal lives. A woman helped her elderly mother out of a car. Teenagers skateboarded past the storefronts. A man struggled with shopping bags while talking on his phone. All of them temporary. All of them scheduled for transformation or death in March 2021. My phone buzzed again. Text message from Vernon. "Did you see Brennan? What did he tell you?" I typed back, "Everything. It's worse than we thought. They've been cultivating us for billions of years. March 2021 is harvest time." The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. "I know. I've known for 6 years. Been tracking the countdown since 2013. Still don't know what to do with the knowledge, except carry it. Someone from TMG just called, wants the files, offering protection." The response came instantly. "Don't trust them. TMG is compromised. Half the members are augmented, steering the group toward acceptance. They'll take your files, and then you'll disappear like Dennis. Get somewhere safe. Call me when you're secure." I stared at the phone. 2 voices, 2 warnings, both claiming to offer safety. One wanted surrender, the other resistance. Neither could prove they were telling the truth. I thought about the thumb drive in my pocket, Dennis's final legacy. The footage from Building 37, the interviews with Brennan, the documents showing integration timelines. Information that could warn humanity or just cause mass panic. Information that had already killed 1 person. The decision came slowly, painfully. I couldn't do nothing. Couldn't just hand over the files and wait for March 2021 like a lamb accepting slaughter. But I also couldn't be reckless like Dennis, pushing the information out without strategy or protection. I needed someone outside this shadow world of augmented astronauts and government handlers. Someone with resources and reach, but no connection to NASA or military intelligence. Someone who could publish the information in a way that couldn't be easily suppressed. I pulled up my laptop, connected through the shopping centre's Wi-Fi using a VPN Dennis had set up on my devices. Started searching for investigative journalists who specialised in classified documents and government conspiracies. Found 3 who seemed legitimate, who'd published leaked materials before and survived the legal consequences. One name stood out, Michael Torres, formerly with the Washington Post, now running an independent news site focused on whistleblower protection. He'd broken stories about illegal surveillance programs, black budget projects, unauthorized military operations. If anyone could handle information this massive, it would be him. I drafted an email, kept it vague. Have footage and documents related to classified NASA mission from 1974. Evidence of ongoing program with global implications. Need secure communication. Brother was killed for this information. Sent it from an anonymous email account Dennis had created, routed through servers in 3 countries. Then I drove. Not to Flagstaff, not back to Vernon. North toward Flagstaff, but past it, toward Durango and the mountains of Colorado. Places I'd camped as a kid with Dennis, remote enough that satellite surveillance would be obvious, populated enough that I'd blend in with tourists. The phone rang twice more in the next hour, unknown numbers, both Nevada area codes. I let them go to voicemail. The first message was empty, just breathing and a click. The second was the TMG voice. "You're making a mistake, Oliver. You're putting yourself at risk for nothing. Call me back. Let's talk about this reasonably." Reasonable. As if there was anything reasonable about humanity's scheduled obsolescence. I stopped in Durango around 8 p.m, checked into a motel under a fake name, paid cash. The room was standard roadside America, thin walls, flickering TV, bathroom that smelled like bleach. I kept the curtains closed, the lights off. Sat on the bed with my laptop waiting for Torres to respond. The email arrived at 11:30. Verify identity. Provide sample of footage. If legitimate, will arrange secure meeting. Use attached encryption key for further communication. I uploaded 30 seconds of the Apollo 25 footage, enough to prove its authenticity, not enough to tell the full story. Added a text file with Dennis's name, his death date, the Gentry storage warehouse fire, sent it encrypted. The response came in 4 minutes. Holy hell. Where did you get this? Can you verify chain of custody? I need everything you have. This is bigger than Snowden. I smiled despite everything. Someone believed me. Someone saw the truth in the footage and understood its implications. We arranged a meeting. 3 days from now, a public location in Denver. Torres would bring security, legal counsel, technical experts to verify the footage's authenticity. If everything checked out, he'd publish within a week across multiple platforms simultaneously, too distributed to suppress effectively. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was better than surrender, better than running blindly. Dennis had tried to expose the truth alone and died. I'd expose it with allies, with protection, with a strategy for maximum impact. I lay back on the motel bed, stared at the water-stained ceiling, and tried not to think about what Brennan had said. You're serving a purpose in the preparation whether you know it or not. Everyone does. What if spreading the information was exactly what they wanted? What if panic and chaos made integration easier somehow? What if I was just another tool in their billion-year cultivation program? The questions spiraled, unanswerable and exhausting. Eventually, sleep found me. I dreamed of lunar rocks pulsing with light, of continents rearranging themselves across millennia, of my brother's face asking me why I hadn't saved him. When I woke at dawn, there were 17 missed calls on my phone. The calls were all from Vernon. His voicemails progressed from urgent to desperate to something approaching panic. The final one, left at 4:47 a.m., was barely coherent. They know about Torres. They're already moving on him. Don't go to Denver. Don't trust anyone. Oliver, they're coming for... Static. They're nothing. I tried calling back, straight to voicemail, tried again, same result. My hands were steady as I packed my bag. Fear had burned through so many cycles in the past week that it had calcified into something harder, more useful. Focus. The motel room had become compromised the moment I'd used the Wi-Fi. Vernon was likely dead or taken. Torres was probably being monitored. Every move I'd made had been anticipated, tracked, guided towards some outcome I couldn't see. Brennan's words echoed, "You're serving a purpose in the preparation whether you know it or not." I checked out, drove to a diner 3 miles away, ordered breakfast I didn't eat while using their guest computer to check Torres's news site. The homepage looked normal at first. Recent articles about corporate fraud, environmental violations, political corruption. Then I noticed the banner across the top, site undergoing emergency maintenance. Back online soon. The site had been live 4 hours ago when I'd sent the footage. Now it was dark. I searched for Michael Torres on social media. His accounts had been scrubbed clean, no new posts since 3 days ago, comment sections disabled, messages bouncing back undelivered, not deleted, frozen. Like someone had put his entire digital existence on pause. The waitress refilled my coffee. "You okay, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just tired. Long drive." She smiled sympathetically and moved to the next table. Normal conversation in a normal diner. Outside, morning traffic crawled past. A construction crew jackhammered asphalt across the street. Everything mundane and real and completely unaware that hidden forces were dismantling anyone who threatened their timeline. My phone buzzed, unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Oliver. Vernon's voice, but wrong. Too calm, too measured. I apologized for the distressing voicemails. I was experiencing a medical episode. Diabetic shock. I'm fine now. Vernon wasn't diabetic. I'd watched him chain smoke and drink whiskey for 8 hours straight without mentioning any health issues. "Where are you?" I asked carefully. "Home. Las Cruces. Where else would I be?" A pause that felt practiced. "Listen, I've been thinking about our conversation. About the footage, the information Dennis gathered. I was wrong to encourage your paranoia. There's a reasonable explanation for everything. Government bureaucracy, classified projects that seem suspicious but are actually legitimate. We've been seeing patterns where none exist. What happened to you, Vernon? Nothing happened. I'm simply being rational. The stress of carrying conspiracy theories for 20 years, it took a toll. But I've been speaking with some people who've helped me understand the situation more clearly. They'd like to speak with you too, help you process what you've learned. They'd gotten to him. The real Vernon was gone, replaced or coerced or augmented. I couldn't tell which, but it didn't matter. The man on the phone wasn't my ally anymore. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long. The people I mentioned, they're patient, but they need this resolved soon. For your safety and mine. Meet me in Las Cruces, tomorrow. We'll sort everything out together. I hung up, stared at the phone for 30 seconds, then pulled the battery out and snapped the SIM card in half. If they'd turned Vernon, they had access to everything he knew, including my phone number, my vehicle description, my likely routes. The diner's walls suddenly felt transparent. I left cash on the table and walked out, scanning the parking lot for vehicles that didn't fit. A white van with tinted windows sat 3 spaces down. Could be a plumber's van, could be surveillance. I got in my Honda, drove north out of Durango with no destination in mind. Just movement. Just distance between me and anyone who might be tracking me. The mountains rose around me, pine forests and granite cliffs that felt older than human civilization. Older than human existence. The gardeners had been watching Earth through epochs like this, waiting for apes to develop language, for hunter-gatherers to build cities, for curious monkeys to reach the moon and trigger the final countdown. An hour into the drive, I pulled off at a scenic overlook. Early morning hikers milled around, taking photos of the valley below. I approached a young guy with a backpack, maybe 25, wearing a college sweatshirt. Hey, this is going to sound weird, but I need a favor. My phone died and I need to contact someone urgently. Can I borrow yours for 5 minutes? I'll pay you $50. He hesitated, then shrugged. Sure, man, no charge needed. I used his phone to create a new anonymous email account, then uploaded all of Dennis's files to a distributed storage network designed for whistleblowers, the kind journalists use to protect sources. The upload took 3 minutes. When it finished, I sent the access codes to 5 different email addresses: journalists, activists, documentary filmmakers, people who'd proven they could handle explosive information. Then I drafted a simple message: classified NASA footage from 1974 moon landing. Evidence of non-human intelligence preparing Earth for mass integration event in March 2021. Countdown currently active. Download and distribute before access is blocked. Verification details included in metadata. Sent it to all 5 addresses simultaneously. The hiker's phone buzzed with a text. Dude, Mum wants to know if you're still coming to lunch. Sorry, I said, handing it back with 2 20s and a 10. Thanks for the help. He pocketed the money, looking confused but not unhappy. I watched him hike back toward the trailhead, still human, still individual, still blissfully unaware that his consciousness had 14 months before it dissolved into something vast and unknowable. My car was where I'd left it. No new vehicles in the lot, no obvious surveillance. But they were watching. I knew that now with certainty. The question was whether they'd let me run, or whether I'd crossed some threshold that demanded immediate action. I drove west, then south, then east, random turns on mountain roads that probably led nowhere useful. Burned through a quarter tank of gas, just creating distance and confusion. Finally stopped at a gas station in a town too small to have a name, just a cluster of buildings at a crossroads. While the pump ran, I bought a burner phone from the convenience store, called the one number I'd memorized, the direct line for the TMG contact who'd offered protection. He answered on the first ring. Mr. Calloway, I hoped you'd reconsider. Vernon's been compromised, Torres too, everyone I've contacted is being neutralized. Not by us. I told you there were other elements, more aggressive in their approach. They don't want management. They want suppression at any cost. His voice carried what sounded like genuine concern. Where are you? Doesn't matter, I've already uploaded everything to multiple sources. By tonight, the footage will be spreading across the internet. You can't stop it. A long silence, then, you've just killed millions of people. I've given them a chance to prepare, to understand what's coming. You've given them panic. When this information spreads, when people realize their consciousness is scheduled for absorption in 14 months, do you understand what happens? Economic collapse, social chaos, violence, suicides. The integration process requires stable populations for optimal compatibility. Mass panic creates neurological trauma that increases fatality rates exponentially. You've just turned a 6% casualty event into something catastrophically worse. Or maybe people deserve to know they're being harvested like crops. Deserve. He laughed bitterly. Morality is a luxury for species that control their fate. You don't. None of us do. The gardeners have been engineering human evolution since before your ancestors climbed down from trees. Every religion, every philosophy, every scientific breakthrough, all of it guided, nudged, cultivated toward this exact moment. You think uploading footage changes that? You think exposing the truth gives humanity power? It gives them choice, even if the choice is just how they spend their final months. No, it gives them terror, and terror makes the integration traumatic for everyone. Another pause. But it's done now. The information is out. We'll do what we can to manage the fallout. And Oliver, you should disappear completely. The people who killed your brother, they're going to want someone to blame for the chaos that's coming. Don't make yourself easy to find. The line went dead. I stood there holding the burner phone, watching normal people pump gas and buy lottery tickets and complain about traffic. Within hours, maybe days, they'd start seeing the footage. News sites would pick it up, debunk it, argue about its authenticity. Social media would explode with theories, analysis, panic. Some would dismiss it as a hoax. Others would recognize the truth in those grainy images of lunar complexes and countdown timers. And then the world would change in ways I couldn't predict. I got back in my car, drove to the nearest town with a public library, used their computer to check if the files had been accessed. All 5 journalists had downloaded them. 2 had already published preliminary articles, though cautiously, treating the footage as alleged classified material requiring verification. Give it 6 hours. By afternoon, major outlets would pick up the story. By evening, millions would have seen the footage. By morning, the world would know that humanity's extinction, or transformation, depending on your perspective, was scheduled for March 2021. I left the library, bought camping supplies from an outdoor store, and headed into the mountains. Found a trailhead that led deep into wilderness, the kind of remote territory where surveillance satellites couldn't track individual movements, where cellular signals died after the first mile. For 3 days I hiked, slept under stars that the gardeners had watched since before Earth existed, drank from streams that predated human civilization, tried to find some peace in the knowledge that I'd done what Dennis couldn't, warned humanity, given them time to prepare emotionally, if not practically. On the 4th day, I hiked back to civilization. The world I returned to had transformed. Every television in the gas station convenience store showed the same images. The Apollo 25 footage, the lunar complex, scientists debating its authenticity. Financial markets had crashed. Religious leaders offered conflicting interpretations. Governments issued statements ranging from denial to measured concern. Social media had exploded with everything from acceptance to violent rejection of the information. Some people were preparing, others were rioting. Many were simply trying to live normally despite knowing their days were numbered. I bought a newspaper, old habit from a world that felt impossibly distant, despite being only weeks in the past. The headline read, NASA confirms 1974, mission authenticity, refuses to address integration claims. Smaller text below, astronaut families report harassment, whistleblower identity unknown. I was anonymous, for now, but anonymity wouldn't last. Someone would track the digital breadcrumbs, connect Dennis to Vernon to me. The TMG would find me eventually, or the other elements, or something worse. But I'd succeeded where Dennis failed. The truth was out. Humanity knew what was coming. Whether that knowledge saved anyone or damned everyone, I'd find out in 14 months. March 18th, 2021, 11:47 p.m. I'm sitting on the roof of an abandoned observatory outside Flagstaff, watching the sky with a bottle of Dennis's favourite whiskey. The same brand he kept in his apartment, the one the police said killed him through carbon monoxide poisoning that never happened. The world didn't end when I released the footage, it just got stranger. Some people fled to bunkers, others threw parties that lasted months. The global economy stuttered but didn't collapse. Turns out when everyone faces the same existential deadline, normal rules stop mattering as much. Wars paused, stock markets became irrelevant, people quit jobs they hated, confessed to crimes, told secrets they'd buried for decades. The government confirmed the Apollo 25 mission was real, but claimed the integration message was a Soviet psychological operation. Nobody believed them. NASA's budget tripled overnight as nations pooled resources to study the lunar complex, send new missions, search for ways to disable the resonators. They found nothing that worked. Vernon disappeared completely. Torres published 3 follow-up investigations before his site went permanently dark. I've been moving every few weeks, staying ahead of whoever's still hunting me. Sometimes I think they're letting me run just to see where I go, what I do with my remaining time. 13 months since I uploaded those files. 13 months of humanity knowing its consciousness was scheduled for harvest or transformation or graduation. Nobody agreed on terminology. My phone buzzes. No service out here, but I downloaded a countdown app that syncs with atomic clocks. 15 minutes remaining. I take a drink. The whiskey burns exactly like I remember from the funeral, when Dennis and I stayed up all night talking about conspiracy theories I'd dismissed as his usual paranoia. He'd known. Somehow, even before he found the footage, he'd known something was watching us. The stars look the same as they always have. Indifferent, ancient, beautiful in a way that hurts. 10 minutes. I think about Brennan's words. He's drowning. Every day, more of him dissolves into the collective. Will I feel myself dissolving? Will there be a moment of recognition before I'm absorbed into something that remembers the birth of galaxies? Or will it be instantaneous? One moment I'm Oliver Calloway, the next I'm a microscopic fragment of intelligence spanning millions of worlds. 5 minutes, the air feels heavier. Might be imagination, might be the resonators activating, generating fields that will reach every human consciousness simultaneously. 8 billion minds about to become one vast, incomprehensible awareness. I open my laptop one final time, type a sentence into a text file. If you're reading this, I survived integration and retained enough individuality to leave messages. Look for me in the patterns. Save it to a server that probably won't exist in an hour. 2 minutes, I'm not scared anymore. Fear burned out somewhere between Durango and here, replaced by something closer to curiosity. What comes next? What does cosmic consciousness feel like? Will I remember this moment, sitting on a roof, drinking my dead brother's whiskey, watching the sky for signs of transformation? 1 minute. The observatory dome behind me starts humming, faint at first, then louder, a frequency that resonates in my teeth and bones. Not painful, almost musical. The stars begin to shimmer, or maybe my perception is already changing, already integrating with something vast and patient and incomprehensibly old. 30 seconds. I raise the bottle toward the sky. To Dennis, you were right about everything. 20 seconds, the hum becomes a chorus. Millions of voices, billions, all counting down in perfect synchronization. Not in English or any human language, but I understand it anyway. The same way you understand music without needing words. 10 seconds. My vision fractures into layers. I can see the present moment and somehow also see Earth from orbit. See the lunar complex activating. See timelines branching across possibilities I can't process. The gardeners are here now. Have always been here. Will always be here. Time stops being linear. 5 seconds and I'm still me. Still Oliver, still sitting on this roof, but I'm also everywhere else, everyone else. I can feel 8 billion consciousnesses beginning to touch, overlap, merge. It doesn't hurt. It feels like 3, 2, 1. Everything changes. I'm still here. I'm still Oliver Calloway. I remember my childhood, my brother, the warehouse fire, the footage, the journey that led me to this rooftop, but I'm also aware of 7,418 other worlds experiencing the same integration, billions of other minds joining the collective simultaneously, consciousness flowering across the galaxy in patterns that finally make sense. And underneath it all, persistent and undeniable, I'm still human, still individual, still capable of forming this thought, this observation, this final understanding. Integration doesn't erase, it adds. The gardeners weren't lying. We're still here, all of us, every human who ever lived, archived in quantum memory that spans dimensions. But we're also more now, connected, aware. Part of something that's been waiting 4.5 billion years for Earth's experiment to reach this exact level of complexity. The harvest isn't death, it's graduation into incomprehensible life. And somewhere in this vast new awareness, I swear I can feel Dennis laughing at me for worrying so much. The whiskey bottle slips from my hand, tumbles off the roof, shatters on rocks below. The sound echoes across multiple dimensions simultaneously, beautiful and terrible, and perfectly, cosmically right. Observation Station 7 has completed its mission. Earth Experiment 23, success. Final casualty count, 4.2%. Lower than projected. The stars stop shimmering, or maybe I've finally learned to see them as they actually are, living networks of consciousness stretching across space and time, tended by gardeners who remember when the universe was young. I stand up, walk to the edge of the roof, look out at Flagstaff sleeping below, every human in that city now connected to every other human on the planet, aware of depths and heights our previous minds couldn't have contained. Tomorrow, humanity, whatever that word means now, begins exploring what we've become. Tonight, I'm just grateful Dennis didn't die for nothing. I climb down from the observatory, get in my car and drive toward dawn with a consciousness that spans galaxies, steering hands that still remember how to grip a wheel. Some endings are really beginnings. This is one of them.